Mr. Wiltfong, how are we doing?
Good morning, Andrew. What's happening, brother?
Oh, not a whole bunch. It's quiet here, but it is busy in Ann Arbor. The last time I had you on, I asked you about Michigan's recruiting, and you said, listen, the reason it didn't just pick up immediately when Sherrone Moore took over is a lot of people wanted to kind of see Michigan on their own timetables. Well, it seems like a lot of those decisions coming home to roost. Yesterday, they got two pieces of good news.
Yeah, they landed Ivan Taylor, flipping the On3 industry top 100 defensive back from Notre Dame. And they also landed one of the more exciting tight end prospects in the country, Andrew Olesh, beating Alabama and Penn State for him. Michigan's got the number 11 recruiting class in the country right now, Andy. And again, as you said at the beginning, sometimes recruiting's timing. And the guys that Michigan was recruiting, this is a timetable for their decision. And the Wolverines are now landing some of their top targets. And they got a few more big ones out there. Guys like five-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola, who I think they're in the top 2 or 3 for as they battle Stanford, Missouri, Oklahoma's in there. And Andrew Marsh is a On3 industry top 100 receiver from the Lone Star State that took an official visit in June. I think Michigan is trending for him as well. They also are the program to beat for one of the fastest receivers in the country out of Louisiana, a young man that they've had on campus a couple times. And Philip Wright III, Ron Bellamy, Michigan's receivers coach, is from Louisiana. He's got sub 10.5 speed in the 100-meter dash. Makes me think of a guy like Roman Wilson, who was so dynamic for Michigan in their run to the national championship. He's got that kind of speed, that kind of juice. Would be a big pickup for Michigan. A guy that's kind of under the radar, not highly recruited nationally like some of these other receivers, but a major skill set, a lot of traits. And Michigan's got that track record of getting the best out of their players.
Well, and so under the Sherrone Moore administration, has evaluation changed? Has targeting changed? Are they looking at a different type of player since Jim Harbaugh left, or is it still pretty much the method that Jim Harbaugh and company were using when he was in charge?
Yeah, I think when you look at this Michigan recruiting class, you see a lot of size, length, upside. I mean, you take quarterback Carter Smith, 6'3", 190 pounds, out of Fort Myers, Florida. He is the Gatorade Player of the Year in the Sunshine State, a guy who, when he was coming up, was one of the best shortstops in the country in his age division, has now shifted his focus to football. His dad was a pro baseball player, good athletic pedigree, one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the country. He's a guy that I could see being a real problem for defenses down the road at Michigan. But Nate Marshall, Jalen Williams are a couple defensive linemen in the fold for the Wolverines that are 6'5" with a lot of length, a lot of size potential to continue playing that dominant style of football they like to play up front on the defensive line.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this evolves, as you get further away from Jim Harbaugh being there. But with Sherrone Moore, I just kind of trust the development up front. That doesn't seem like that's going to change.
Well, huge shoes to fill for this entire coaching staff. You're talking about Michigan losing their head coach, Jim Harbaugh. They lose their offensive coordinator. They lose their defensive coordinator. They lose their strength and conditioning coach from the last regime. But a lot of the hires are from within.
Yeah,
and they don't lose their offensive coordinator. Sherrone Moore gets promoted, and then they promote from within with Coach Kirk Campbell. But again, a lot of changing of the guard, but a lot of guys that were around that were integral parts of Michigan winning 3 straight Big Ten championships and obviously winning the national championship this past year. But these are the guys that are now the shot callers in their respective rooms. So it'll be exciting to see what they're able to do as Michigan turns the page into the 2024 era. Yeah, 2025.
Yeah, 2024 season.
2024
you're in 2025 mode. I understand.
That always screws me up because I'm always working a year in advance based on the recruiting class year, right? So,
well, it's interesting because I feel like we're now very deep into the recruitment of the class of 2025. We came out with our updated rankings this week. What's that like? What is a ranking update week like for you? Are you just bombarded by people saying, how could you drop so-and-so? And how could you have this guy ahead of this guy?
Well, there is a loud minority that thinks that there's a conspiracy for their team or their program. But Charles Power, Cody Belair, I'm a small part of it, doing the best we can to get these guys in the best spots to kind of predict where they're going to go in the NFL draft. And just because, hey, there's guys that we love as high school players. There's guys that we think will be difference makers in college. But then when you start taking their body types and comparing them to NFL draft history and players on that next level, they don't check that box. So maybe they're ranked a little lower. And then people are like, well, I don't care what their NFL ranking is going to be. I care what their college ranking is going to be because that's what I'm following. Well, it goes hand in hand. The teams with the best pro prospects, the teams with the most NFL draft picks, they generally are the ones that are the best teams on Saturday. So that's kind of the way we do things, but there's no conspiracies. And then obviously Chad Simmons and I, we put out these rankings updates. So with that, we're trying to kind of rehash and remind our readers the latest intel on these prospects processes. So we had the 5-star scoop yesterday. Today we'll have some intel on where things stand with the remaining top 100 guys that are uncommitted or perhaps will decommit down the road or pondering a potential flip. We'll have all that on the site later today.
I am glad you mentioned that because it does seem like decision days are coming up for several people. DJ Pickett, the DB from Zephyr Hills, Florida, he plays corner at like 6'4", but he's making a decision next week. What do you think happens there?
Well, some teams have talked about him playing on both sides of the ball. He is a dynamic wide receiver on the prep level with a skill set to be a blue chip wideout as well. Oregon's one of those programs that's had that dialogue with him. Certainly, again, corner is where he's coveted. But the Ducks are trending right now, in my opinion. They got to hold off Miami and LSU here over the next week or so. But I like the way this is setting up for Oregon. Oregon's got the number 3 recruiting class in the country. That's where they finished a cycle ago. So Dan Lanning and that staff showing that they have the chops to recruit at a high level. There's a lot of resources and backing behind the Ducks program as well right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen them make a jump where it feels like this class they're putting together looks like what we've seen out of Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State over the past few years. And those are the ones that compete for national titles. Where was that? Because it feels like Mario Cristobal was recruiting well when he was the coach at Oregon, but it feels like it's gone up another notch under Dan Lanning. Is that strictly because of NIL, or is it because this staff is able to kind of convince these guys to come? Because they live a lot farther away from the best players than a lot of these other schools do.
No, Mario Cristobal and his staff did a good job in Eugene, and that turned into the Miami job for him, his dream job to go back to his alma mater and try and restore glory to Miami. Dan Lanning and company get to Oregon and take over a program that was winning double-digit football games. And they did a good job in the transfer portal right away, landing difference makers on the defensive line. Nobody's done a better job of getting quarterbacks out of the transfer portal than this Oregon staff, from Bo Nix to Dylan Gabriel to Dante Moore. And then certainly they've got guys like Evan Stewart, former 5-star receiver who was at Texas, who's now at Oregon. They're trying to make the same jump this year that Washington made under Kalen DeBoer, right? Oregon's a team that they've been in that college football playoff conversation and just couldn't beat the Huskies, but they keep at it. They're recruiting at a high level, hit the portal again hard this past cycle, and they'll take another swing this year. And they're certainly one of the programs that you say is on the short list to compete for a national championship. And with the way they're recruiting, you figure they're going to be in this mix for a long time under Coach Lanning and the staff.
We're watching Decorian Moore's fireworks going off on July 4th. One other question about an uncommitted five-star plus. Excuse me, David Sanders Jr., one of the best offensive linemen in the country. He's deciding August 17th. And where do you see this one trending?
Yeah, and 5-star plus, for those of you that don't know, means it's a 5-star ranking on all 4 industries. David Sanders has that. Number 1 offensive tackle per the On3 industry. Number 2 player overall. I give the inch to Ohio State right now, but this recruitment still has over a month. And I wouldn't be surprised if he took a couple more visits in July to get back to see some of his finals, get back around him again as he and his family work through this decision. David Sanders, not only a premier football prospect, the reigning Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of North Carolina after helping Providence Day win another state championship, but he's also a plus student. He's got aspirations to be an orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine major. That's very important to him too. And I think on his last visit to Ohio State, his official the weekend of June 21st, he got to spend a lot of time in the hospital over there, rubbing elbows with doctors, talking about what that Ohio State network means in that city. Being from Charlotte, going to Columbus, I think that's something that would be seamless for him and his family. Likes Ohio State's track record of player development, guys like Paris Johnson. He really fits in with the guys on the team, fits in with the recruits in the class, a lot of like-minded things there. Wealth of potential, as Mom said about Ohio State for her son, David there. So I know that they really like Ohio State. Tennessee's the other program that we've been watching closely. He's been there 4 times this calendar year, including their 865 live event, their spring game, his official visit in the summer. He's done a day in the life of a student athlete at Tennessee. He's got a great feel for them, likes the way they developed Darnell Wright into a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So those are the 2 programs that I think are in the best position, but Georgia and Nebraska round out the Final Four. And there have been times earlier in the process where I thought Georgia has led. You can't sleep on them for the stage they play on, the player development. And then Nebraska is kind of the program that's been quietly rising. They originally didn't make his top 6. Then he takes an official visit there over Mother's Day weekend. And now they're still in the running where teams like Clemson and South Carolina and Alabama are no longer in the picture. And one of the things that turned him on to Nebraska was he said that seeing Dylan Raiola flip from Georgia to Nebraska at the end of last cycle. He's been building a relationship with Dylan Raiola. They had a really good official visit there. And Nebraska's got a lot of backing and resources to their football program right now as they try and restore some glory in Lincoln under Matt Rule and company. Andy, I think we've talked about this before. Nebraska is one of the more fascinating teams for me this year because if you look at them the last 4 or 5 years, they've lost every single close game. All of them. Every one-score game has gone the other way. So
yeah, if you turn that around,
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The Minnesota game last year was just another reminder of what that's been like for them. And so Matt Rule and company trying to turn a culture around to win some close ball games. And you do that, and it changes the whole mentality around the building and the program.
Before we let you go, there's a really interesting question in the chat from Rick. And I realize this is kind of general, but I'm curious about how you feel like this has evolved over the years. So this is what Rick asked. What is the flip potential today for any commit versus 5 or even 10 years ago? Likelihood of a flip percentage-wise. I realize it's individual based, but is it more likely now? Is it less likely now? Has it changed over the past 5-10 years?
I don't have the data, but I just feel like I've been covering recruiting for 16 years or so, and flips have been relevant the whole time. Now I do remember early on, it used to drive people crazy, and a lot of people that never walked in the shoes of these prospects and their families just thought, again, it was a loud minority, just thought it was just ridiculous that a young man would change his mind.
Yeah.
But look, man, these college coaches, they don't get these jobs by accident. They are alpha, very persuasive.
Mm-hmm.
If you continue to talk to these coaches, they'll give you reason to believe that they're the best players for you to play for. Seasons get played, information changes, other guys commit, guys get hurt, players emerge on depth charts. There's all kinds of factors, coaches moving around. There's all kinds of factors that change recruitments. And that's just the landscape that we're in. But I think it's always happened. And Andy, if you kind of go back and read old stories, like Ronnie Brown was at the On3 Elite Series, and he went to Auburn. I didn't realize he was committed elsewhere before Auburn.
Yeah,
it was a different era.
We didn't cover it as hard back then either. I think that was part of it too.
Sure.
But and the other thing,
the point remains the same.
Yeah,
it's happened. It's always happened. It's just now the interest in recruiting has gone up each year. There's a lot more eyeballs. These prospects, they used to only be known by the absolute diehards. Now, strong college football fans know who Jeremiah Smith is or DeCorian Moore. where 10 years ago they didn't. So, the media, there's a lot more media coverage on it, which just puts a lot more eyeballs on them. There was a time where these guys were only known by their local papers and Tom Lemming and Alan Wallace. So this industry has really grown, and it's fascinating to sometimes even hear like how the media is perceived in football recruiting media, because again, these prospects, they're blown up because of the recruiting media and the amount of interest and the amount of people. And I'm not talking about just the big ones on 3, 24/7, Rivals and ESPN, but just so many fan sites and things that are putting these kids out there in such a positive light. They've become, more nationally known, and the interest in it is phenomenal as college football continues to grow and grow.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.